How's that? Okay. Hi everybody, my name is Louisa Gray. I'm a blogger, I'm a parent, I'm an author. I have 2 children who are special needs. They are both diagnosed ADHD and autistic, and we have suffered under the mainstream school system. That's what I want to talk about today. Because in spite of what the law currently says, my children were never, ever treated with equity or dignity or even the most basic inclusivity. Now, those of us who've been paying attention to what Bridget is trying to do will hear the word inclusivity mentioned quite a lot. It doesn't exist, and yet right now, education should be nothing but inclusive by law. Even with diagnoses, even with EHCPs, my children's schools, and there were 4 of them, decided not to see my children's needs. The school's attitudes were, we don't care. We don't care if your child's got special needs. We don't care if they've even got a lawfully enforceable EHCP. We are not going to treat them any differently. They were able to take that view because my local authority allowed them to, and because successive government failures have allowed them to. There simply is no accountability. It's my view that schools and councils all over this country are hiding in plain sight as the biggest drivers of the crisis that SEND families are in. The Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill in its current form does absolutely nothing to solve any of those issues. Worse still, this bill's being pushed through without genuine consultation, because no matter what the DFE might say about it, having 1,100 people on a Teams call, as happened just the other week, to talk at them about this bill is not a consultation. Many SEND parents feel our education system is broken. I would say the truth is worse than that. The education system is rotten, and the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill does nothing to remedy that. The non-compliance with existing SEND law that happens day in and day out all over the UK is truly shocking. The harm our mainstream education system does to the mental health and well-being of far too many of our children is even more shocking. And yet, if the Children's Wellbeing in School Bill passes in its current form, those same schools and councils who already openly flout the law and cause such harm to so many children will have even more power. In its current form, this bill will hand more control to the very people who are already not meeting SEND needs, either because of a lack of training or, as was the case in my children's 4 schools, because of a basic lack of will. The leadership at my kids' schools simply did not want to meet my children's special educational needs. It was too much trouble for them. If this bill passes, it will put any Secretary of State for Education, whoever might come after Bridget, and every local authority above us as parents, as the primary decision makers on our children's lives and education. Completely unqualified strangers, as we've already discussed, will be able to demand information about our children and enter our homes. And local authorities will have the power to force a child into school, even if that school is completely unsuitable, and even if that school is refusing to obey the law and meet a child's needs. Our homes will no longer be the safe places our children need and deserve them to be. And the harms that are built into a supposed children's wellbeing bill are staggering. And for what? What's this bill actually trying to achieve? More children in mainstream school, whether it's right for them or not, and more government control, as plenty of us have said this afternoon. Because that's easier and it's cheaper than actually having to tackle the real roots of this problem. Just saying words like we'll have more send hubs, we'll have more centres of excellence, or more inclusivity, they don't cut it, especially not for a send child who's in crisis like mine were. So what will we do if our child is so desperately traumatised and unhappy in school they are literally trying to end themselves, as mine have? Well, if our child has an EHCP, we'll no longer have the choice to say no more, even though the Education Act 1996 says the opposite. Instead, the same local authorities that are already failing send children in the very worst ways will be able to override any choice we make as parents to keep our child safe, and we will have no right of appeal. This is wrong beyond words. Bridget Phillipson is an elected politician. She may be a parent. She is a parent, as we know, but she's also an elected politician. She is not a diagnostic professional, and that's what our children need. Neither are any of the teachers or the local authority employees who've ever dealt with any of my children's needs. These people do not live the complex lives that send families live. And more importantly, they're not our children's parents, we are. How our children are educated and where and who buy, and what keeps them safe and what meets their needs are fundamental choices for parents to make, not the state. Bridget, when are you going to listen? This bill is the wrong answer to the wrong questions, and you know it is. Stop this bill. Thank you.
Neither do I, don't worry. Right, hello, can you hear me alright?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, I've actually wrote my speech this time, but I'll be honest, if I'd have filtered it, then you're not going to hear what we all need to. So I do always find it really hard to start these things, so I am just going to jump straight in. I have become increasingly frustrated with the very narrow safeguarding and well-being the very narrow way safeguarding and well-being are being talked about right now. We keep hearing high-level promises, quick fixes, confident plans, and we're told the resolution sits inside the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill. But the reality is, the system this bill relies on are already failing, and the evidence for that is everywhere. This bill doesn't begin by fixing what's broken, it begins by expanding power, and that is the wrong way round. Across education, social care, health, SEND, early help, kinship care and more, families are falling through the gaps. They are being processed through a system that cannot deliver what they promised, that escalate instead of support, and that blame families when the help simply isn't there. Parents don't enter these systems looking for conflict, they enter for help. And what they often meet instead is delay, disbelief, documentation, escalation and silence when things go wrong. So let's talk honestly about social care a minute. The people inside that system are telling us it's not working. Around 94% of social workers say overwork stops safe practice. Nearly 80% say there are no services to refer families to. Around another 80% say paperwork prevents real work with children. That doesn't describe a system ready to expand duties and wider discretion. It describes a system under strain, where delays are poor, decisions are bad, and family blame becomes inevitable. And when support doesn't exist, parents are blamed for the gap. And that pattern matters, because the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill responds to these failures by giving the same system more authority, more reach and more control over family life without fixing capacity, accountability or delivery. I have been fortunate to be able to share a very brief case at this moment in time, which I just want to input into my social care side of things. What we are finding at the moment is a significant increase when it comes to children with complex needs or a failing education, or when families are screaming for help and it never comes when it's supposed to. I have seen families very recently be bullied and threatened during engagement with social care. I've seen unlawful practice from the get-go. I've seen doorstepping without authority or due jurisdiction to do so. I've seen escalation of Section 47 inquiries, which, let's be honest, it'd be better as sandpaper for your durable, because it's not fit for purpose. So where does that leave us? Because on one side we've got a system that is absolutely cannot do it, and I have social workers and people that work in court process turning around to me and going, this is not fit for purpose, it doesn't work. What can we actually do to advocate for the child? Because well-being disappears the minute you rely on documentation. In one particular case, a child has recently been removed from their family. They've been removed from their family because the child has mental health problems. They were removed because they were told they were signing a Section 17. What they actually signed was a Section 20. Now they have to go through a whole court process to even be able to get it back. And the worst thing is that child's still struggling in school. Still not getting the support it needs, still not getting the education entitlement it needs at all. And then if we go back over to early help, it's inconsistent, inaccessible, often arrives after things have already fallen apart. Parents are passed between services instead of supported. Prevention has quite easily been replaced with education. And escalation does not feel like care when you're living inside it. And now I want to talk to you a little bit about kinship care. Kinship care is one of the several communities now being held up as evidence that this bill will work. And that matters, because kinship shows the same pattern of conflict between promise and reality. Kinship care is not failing because it's misunderstood, it is being put at risk. Because this bill will directly conflict what they say is supposedly a positive mechanism within kinship care. And frankly, I don't think it is, because if you go back and you look through the legislation, you'll see that all those mechanisms they're promising, they're already written in law. So where is it? And how is a local offer and yet another local offer model going to help when we can't even deliver the services we've got? How is that going to make any difference? And frankly, I find it very much an insult to kinship carers. Kinship already sits within existing law. It already spans family law, safeguarding, education and health. There are mechanisms in place, statutory guidance and family support duties that are supposed to make kinship work. The problem is not that those mechanisms don't exist. The problem is that they are being delivered. They are not being delivered, enforced or corrected when they fail. And instead of fixing what is already wrong, this bill moves on, as if those failures have never happened. Kinship works because it is relational, flexible and family-led, because it avoids unnecessary escalation, because it keeps children out of systems that often cause more harm than good. This bill cuts straight across that, pulling kinship into expanded monitoring, conditional plans and shared data systems. It overrides the very protections that kinship relies on. Support becomes surveillance, flexibility becomes formality, trust becomes control, and once again, kinship families are paraded as proof that reform is happening, while the underlying failures that are already destabilised them and have left untouched. The proposed data systems are not even safe for kinship carers, as we know from the wider discussions earlier on in these speeches. Many kinship arrangements exist alongside domestic histories, protected families, informal placements, and sensitive circumstances where control of that information is itself a safeguard measure. Expanding data aggregation without fixing known data failures does not protect kinship, it exposes it. And education shows the same pattern. Families fight for years to access support that already exists in law. Appeals rise year on year, and when families finally reach tribunal, they overwhelmingly win. That doesn't tell us parents are unreasonable, it tells us decisions are wrong. Millions are spent defending failures instead of supporting children, and then families are told the solution is more monitoring, more oversight, and more power. Power without accountability does not protect children, it silences families. And I want to say something that matters deeply to me. Home education was always a lawful option for my children, and it worked. We were told repeatedly that if we re-entered the system, support would come, that cooperation would be met with collaboration, that systems would finally listen. And I regret that decision every day. Because instead of support, we met escalation. Instead of understanding, we met disbelief. Instead of help, there was harm. And I say this because many families are being pushed into systems they do not trust. Systems that do not and will not even attempt to deliver. While lawful alternatives are treated as suspicious instead of valid. If I had stayed steadfast, my children's lives right now would look incredibly different. And that is not a small thing to say. Before I came here today, I asked my son what he wanted people to know. And this is what he's asked them to say. They have no business speaking for us. They cannot manage the systems they already had. They lied about me for years. They marked me present when I wasn't even in school and couldn't even attend the school for 4 years. They promised me support if I complied, and it never came, and now I can barely even move and get out of my bed. I had a chance to live my childhood, and the system took it away, and I will never get that back. But what he knows he can do is he can share his voice through me, and we will find a way for the system to learn from the mistakes and the harm that has been caused to him. I mean, the thing is, it isn't just about one school, it isn't just about one family, it isn't about systems maintaining records instead of delivering reality, attendance over well-being, compliance over care. We are now being asked to accept expanded data sharing and coordination, but data breaches involving children have happened already. Information has been mishandled, safeguards have already failed. You do not fix weak accountability by expanding powers and multiply the risk in the process. Grassroots families, carers and communities already know what's worked, and we are tired of being ignored, and we won't have it. Early help support that arise, family-led solutions, lawful education choices, listening before escalating, stopping when systems are wrong. None of that requires more power. It requires fixing what already exists. So here is the question that must be answered before any expansion of authority. How would the Children's Wellbeing and School Board have protected children and families like us where existing systems, safeguards and duties fail, and they often seem proud of it? Until that answer exists, clearly and honestly, this bill is not the way forward. In any way, shape or form. And children should never be the price, should never pay the price for getting it wrong. Thank you.